Not every muscle car from the 1960s was a legend. Some were pretenders, some were failures, and some were outright disasters that tarnished proud nameplates and disappointed buyers who expected Detroit iron to deliver on promises of power and performance. Today we're counting down the 12 worst muscle cars out of the 1960s. Machines that looked the part but couldn't deliver, cars that suffered from corporate cost-cutting or misguided engineering, models that promised muscle car thrills but delivered economy car disappointment. These aren't the celebrated legends that dominate collector auctions and enthusiast magazines. These are the forgotten failures, the embarrassments, the cautionary tales that prove not every attempt at building a muscle car succeeded. From underpowered pretenders with big block badges hiding small block realities, to handling disasters that couldn't navigate corners without drama, to reliability nightmares that spent more time broken than running. These machines represented Detroit at its worst, when marketing promises exceeded engineering capabilities and buyers paid the price. Let's dive into the disappointments and discover why some muscle cars deserve to be forgotten. Number 12, 1969, Ford Fairlane Cobra. The Fairlane Cobra should have been a legitimate muscle car contender. Ford's mid-size platform powered by serious engines competing against Chevelle and GTOs. But the 1969 Fairlane Cobra suffered from an identity crisis and execution problems that left it trailing competitors. Ford positioned the Cobra as a budget muscle car, stripping features to reduce price while offering big block power. The strategy made sense on paper, undercut competitors on price, while delivering similar performance. But the reality disappointed buyers who discovered that cheap meant cheap. The base Cobra engine was Ford's 351 cubic inch Windsor small block, producing 250 horsepower. Adequate but hardly impressive in an era when big blocks were standard muscle car equipment. Buyers could upgrade to the 428 Cobra jet, which delivered genuine performance, but the base engine made the Cobra a muscle car in appearance only. The interior was stripped to reduce costs, rubber floor mats instead of carpet, vinyl bench seats instead of buckets, minimal sound deadening that created harsh interior noise. The ride quality was punishing. The suspension tuned for performance created a bone-jarring experience on anything but smooth pavement. The handling was mediocre despite the performance suspension. The Fairlane's chassis wasn't as sophisticated as competitors, and the result was understeer and body roll that made aggressive cornering unpleasant. The styling was generic and forgettable. The Fairlane looked like what it was, a mid-size Ford sedan with hood scoops and stripes added. It lacked the visual drama of Mopars or the clean aggression of GM muscle cars. The build quality was typical late 60s Ford, acceptable but not impressive, with panel gaps and interior fit that felt cheap. The Cobra's greatest sin was being forgettable. It didn't excel at anything particularly well, didn't offer compelling value despite lower prices, and didn't create emotional connections with buyers. Today, Fairlane Cobras are unloved and undervalued, appreciated only by dedicated Ford enthusiasts. They represent what happens when cost-cutting compromises the muscle car formula, when attempts to build budget performance create machines that satisfy nobody. Number 11, 1968 AMC Rambler Rebel SST. American Motors' attempt at building a muscle car from the Rambler platform resulted in one of the most awkward and unsuccessful efforts of the era. The Rebel SST tried to shed Rambler's economy car image by adding performance trim and a larger engine. But you can't create a muscle car simply by bolting on hood scoops and racing stripes. The 390 cubic inch AMX V8 produced 280 horsepower, respectable but not competitive with big block Mopars or GM's top engines. The torque output was decent at 320 foot-pounds, but it arrived too high in the rev range to provide the tire-smoking launches that muscle car buyers expected. The Rebel's fundamental problem was its origins. The platform was designed for economy and practicality, not performance. The suspension components, chassis tuning, and overall engineering prioritized comfort over handling. Adding a larger engine didn't transform the basic character. The weight distribution was poor, with too much mass over the front wheels, creating persistent understeer. The brakes were inadequate for spirited driving, drums all around that faded quickly under repeated stops. The steering was vague and over-assisted, providing minimal feedback. The result was a car that accelerated adequately in straight lines, but couldn't handle corners or stops with any competence. Quarter-mile times hovered around 16 seconds, numbers that would have been acceptable in the early 60s, but were embarrassing by 1968 standards, when competitors were running deep into the 14ers, or even the 13ers. The exhaust note was uninspiring, lacking the aggressive rumble that made muscle cars sound as good as they looked. The automatic transmission, standard on most Rebel SSTs, further sapped performance and created a disconnect between throttle input and acceleration that made the car feel sluggish. The styling was generic AMC, conservative lines, and awkward proportions that lacked the visual drama buyers expected from muscle cars. The SST graphics package added stripes and badges, but couldn't overcome the basic Rambler shape that screamed family sedan rather than performance machine. The interior was typical AMC, functional but cheap, with hard plastics and thin upholstery that felt low rent compared to GM or Ford products. The dashboard was cluttered and confusing, with gauges scattered illogically and switches that felt flimsy. The build quality was adequate but uninspiring, and reliability issues plagued early examples. AMC's limited dealer network meant parts and service were harder to obtain than with Big Three products. The resale values plummeted quickly as buyers discovered the Rebel SST's shortcomings, making them poor investments that depreciated faster than competitors. The Rebel SST's greatest failure was not understanding what made muscle cars appealing. They needed to look aggressive, sound intimidating, and perform impressively. The Rebel delivered none of these consistently. The marketing tried to position the Rebel SST as a sophisticated alternative to crude muscle cars, but enthusiasts weren't interested in sophistication. They wanted raw power and excitement. Today, Rebel SSTs are rare not because they're collectible, but because most were scrapped or abandoned. They represent AMC's struggle to compete with manufacturers that had far greater resources and experience building performance cars. Number 10, 1967 Mercury Comet Cyclone GT. Mercury's Comet had been a compact economy car before growing into a mid-sized platform that Mercury tried to position as a muscle car alternative. The 1967 Cyclone GT featured Ford's 390 cubic inch FE big block, producing 320 horsepower, adequate but trailing competitors' output. The real problems were execution and positioning. Mercury marketed the Cyclone GT as a gentleman's muscle car, emphasizing luxury and refinement over raw performance. This confused buyers. Muscle car enthusiasts wanted power and aggression, while luxury buyers weren't interested in big block engines and stiff suspensions. The Cyclone GT satisfied neither group completely. The styling was conservative Mercury, formal roofline, lots of chrome, proportions that looked more executive sedan than muscle car. The GT graphics package added stripes and badges, but couldn't overcome the basic shape's lack of aggression. The interior prioritized comfort over sport. Bench seats were standard, with bucket seats optional. The dashboard and controls were oriented toward luxury rather than performance. The handling was disappointing despite suspension upgrades. The Cyclone's chassis wasn't optimized for performance, and the result was body roll and understeer that made spirited driving unpleasant. The brakes were marginal, front discs helped, but rear drums faded under aggressive use. The weight was excessive for the power available. The Cyclone GT weighed over 3,700 pounds, which meant the 390 engine struggled to deliver muscle car acceleration. Quarter-mile times in the mid-15-second range were adequate, but not impressive compared to properly equipped competitors. The build quality was typical Mercury, better than Ford, but not exceptional, with some examples suffering from squeaks, rattles, and premature wear. Mercury's limited marketing and the Cyclone's confused positioning meant sales were disappointing. Today, Cyclone GTs are forgotten. Collectors prefer Mustangs or actual muscle cars, leaving the Cyclone as a curiosity that few remember and fewer value. They represent Mercury's struggle to find identity between Ford's mass market and Lincoln's luxury, and the failure to create compelling performance cars that could compete with established muscle car names. Number 9, 1966 Dodge Charger. The original Charger should have been a Mopar muscle car icon from day one, but the 1966 debut was plagued by questionable decisions that limited its appeal and success. Dodge based the Charger on the B-body platform shared with Coronets, a solid foundation that proved capable in other applications. But the styling decisions were controversial and ultimately unsuccessful. The fastback roofline looked dramatic, but created terrible rear seat headroom and trunk access. The sloping rear window created a massive blind spot that made backing up and changing lanes hazardous, and the interior temperature soared on sunny days as the greenhouse effect turned the cabin into an oven. The hidden headlights behind electric doors looked cool but were unreliable and expensive to repair. The motors that operated the headlight doors failed frequently, leaving drivers with non-functional lighting and expensive repair bills at Dodge dealerships. The 4 bucket seats with a full-length center console seemed sporty, but made the rear seats nearly unusable for adults. The console ran the entire length of the interior, preventing any possibility of a third passenger in back, and making the Charger essentially a 2-passenger car despite its mid-sized dimensions. The dashboard featured a full-width instrument panel with individual gauges that looked impressive, but was difficult to read and suffered from electrical problems. The gauge cluster's complexity meant more components that could fail, and many 66 Chargers suffered from non-functional gauges and lighting issues that were expensive to diagnose and repair. The base engine was Dodge's 361 cubic inch V8, producing 265 horsepower, barely adequate for a car weighing over 3,800 pounds. Even with optional big blocks, the 426 Street Hemi or 440 Magnum, the Charger felt heavy and sluggish compared to lighter, more agile competitors. The weight penalty from the complex interior, heavy fastback roof structure, and additional equipment meant the Charger needed more power than competitors to achieve similar performance. The handling was ponderous, the suspension tuning prioritized comfort over performance, and the Charger's size and weight made it feel like a cruiser rather than a muscle car. The body roll in corners was excessive, and the vague steering feedback made spirited driving more anxious than enjoyable. The brakes were inadequate for the car's performance potential, drums all around on base models, with front discs optional but still marginal for aggressive driving. The brake fade during repeated stops was pronounced, creating safety concerns that deterred performance-oriented buyers. The build quality was typical mid-60s Mopar, acceptable but not exceptional, with some examples suffering from electrical gremlins and trim pieces that didn't fit properly. Sales were disappointing. Dodge projected strong numbers, but buyers stayed away, finding the Charger too expensive, too compromised, and too weird compared to established alternatives. The first-year sales of just over 37,000 units fell far short of Dodge's expectations and left dealers stuck with inventory they struggled to move even with incentives. The pricing was problematic. The Charger cost significantly more than a Coronet with the same engine, and buyers questioned whether the fastback styling and gimmicky features justified the premium. A base Charger cost several $100s more than an equivalent Coronet, money that bought styling rather than performance or capability. Today, 1966 Chargers are the least desirable of all Charger years, overshadowed by the iconic 68 through 70 models that fixed most of the original's problems. They represent a false start, a concept that needed refinement before it could succeed. The few collectors who appreciate 66 Chargers value them for their oddball status and distinctive styling, rather than for performance credentials or driving dynamics. Number 8, 1969, Chevrolet Nova SS 396.
Remain sexy. Motor Trend magazine tested a Ram Air 4 GTO.
Chevrolet's Nova was a capable compact platform that could be transformed into a legitimate muscle car with the right engine. But the 1969 Nova SS with the base 396 cubic inch big block was a half measure that disappointed buyers expecting genuine muscle car performance. The 396 produced 325 horsepower, adequate but not impressive in an era when Chevrolet offered 400 horsepower plus engines. The problem was positioning. Chevrolet marketed the Nova SS as a muscle car alternative, but equipped most with engines that couldn't deliver on that promise. Buyers who wanted genuine performance needed to order the rare L78 or even rarer L89 options. But most Novas left showrooms with the base big block or even small blocks. The 396 Nova's performance was disappointing. Quarter-mile times in the mid-15-second range were adequate but trailed properly equipped competitors. The torque was decent, but the power fell off at higher RPM, limiting top-end performance. The handling was competent for the era. The Nova's compact dimensions and relatively balanced weight distribution provided advantages over larger muscle cars. But the base suspension wasn't optimized for performance, and body roll and understeer were issues during aggressive driving. The braking was marginal, front discs were optional, but rear drums were standard, and the system wasn't sized for sustained aggressive use. The styling was clean and simple Nova, which looked good, but lacked the visual drama of dedicated muscle cars. The SS package added stripes, badges, and hood that hinted at performance without delivering proportional substance. The interior was basic Chevy, functional but plain, with materials that felt cheap and assembly that was merely acceptable. The build quality was typical late 60s GM, better than some competitors, but not exceptional, with examples showing typical panel gaps and minor fit issues. The Nova SS's greatest sin was being a tease. It looked like a muscle car, was marketed as a muscle car, but didn't consistently deliver muscle car performance, unless buyers spec'd expensive options most couldn't afford. Today, base-engine Nova SSs are relatively unloved. Collectors want L78 or Yenko cars, leaving 396 examples as affordable alternatives that remind us not all SS badges guaranteed impressive performance. Number 7. 1967 Plymouth Belvedere GTX. Plymouth's GTX was supposed to be the gentleman's muscle car, a Belvedere equipped with big block power and luxury features, creating a machine that combined performance with comfort. But the 1967 debut suffered from weight problems and confused positioning that limited its success. The standard engine was the 440 cubic inch Super Commando, producing 375 horsepower. Strong output, but hampered by the GTX's excessive weight. Plymouth loaded the GTX with luxury features: power windows, air conditioning, vinyl top, upgraded interior trim that added hundreds of pounds compared to stripped-down Roadrunners or Superbeats. The result was a car weighing over 3,800 pounds that felt sluggish despite powerful engines. Even with the optional 426 Street Hemi producing 425 horsepower, the GTX couldn't match lighter cars' acceleration. Quarter-mile times in the mid-14-second range with the 440 were respectable but not impressive, and the HEMI's immense power advantage was partially negated by the weight penalty. The handling was ponderous, the suspension was tuned for comfort, and the GTX's size and weight made it feel like a cruiser. Body roll was excessive, understeer was persistent, and the overall experience was more boulevard cruiser than muscle car. The brakes were marginal despite front discs. The GTX's weight required more stopping power than the system could consistently deliver, and fade was an issue during aggressive driving. The styling was handsome but conservative. The Belvedere body looked elegant but lacked the visual aggression of Chargers or the raw simplicity of Roadrunners. The GTX looked more executive express than muscle car, which confused its market positioning. The interior was nicely appointed with the luxury features Plymouth included, but the overall ambiance was more luxury car than performance machine. The build quality was typical Mopar, acceptable but not exceptional, with some examples suffering from electrical problems and trim pieces that didn't fit properly. The GTX's fundamental problem was identity. It tried to be both luxury car and muscle car, succeeding at neither completely. Buyers who wanted luxury bought actual luxury cars, while muscle car enthusiasts chose lighter, cheaper alternatives like the Roadrunner. Today, GTXs are respected but not particularly valuable. They represent Plymouth's attempt to create a premium muscle car that never found its audience. Number 6. 1968 Oldsmobile Cutlass 442 Hurst Olds. The Hurst Olds should have been special, a limited edition collaboration between Oldsmobile and Hurst Performance that combined the 442 platform with unique styling and additional performance. But the 1968 Hurst Olds suffered from availability issues, quality control problems, and performance that didn't justify the premium pricing. Oldsmobile and Hurst created the car to showcase their partnership and promote both brands, but execution problems undermined the concept. The engine was Oldsmobile's 455 cubic inch V8 force air inducted and producing 390 horsepower officially. Though actual output was higher, the power was strong but not exceptional compared to Hemi Mopars or LS6 Chevelle. The Hurst modified 4-speed manual transmission shifted well, but wasn't significantly better than standard Olds units. The real differentiation was cosmetic. The Hurst Olds featured unique silver and black paint, distinctive striping, and special badging. But these visual touches didn't translate to proportional performance advantages, making the Hurst Olds more appearance package than genuine performance upgrade. The handling was typical 442, competent for the era, but not exceptional, with body roll and understeer that made aggressive cornering more dramatic than effective. The brakes were front discs and rear drums that were adequate but not exceptional for the car's weight and performance. The interior featured Hurst shifter and upgraded trim, but was otherwise standard Cutlass, which was nice but not special. The build quality varied. Some Hurst Olds examples were well assembled, while others suffered from problems with paint quality, trim fitment, and mechanical issues. The conversion process added complexity and potential failure points. The pricing was problematic. The Hurst Olds cost significantly more than a standard $442 with similar performance, making buyers question whether the visual differentiation justified the premium. The availability was limited by design, with only 515 built for 1968, but this scarcity didn't create proportional desirability. Today, Hurst Olds cars are collectible primarily for their rarity, rather than exceptional performance or significance. They represent what happens when appearance takes priority over substance, when marketing creates special editions that don't offer compelling advantages over standard models. Number 5, 1969, Pontiac Firebird 400. Pontiac's Firebird shared the Camaro platform and should have been equally capable, but the 1969 Firebird 400 suffered from weight problems and execution issues that left it trailing Camaro performance. The 400 cubic inch V8 produced 335 horsepower in base form, or 345 with ram air. Strong output but hampered by the Firebird's excessive weight. Pontiac loaded the Firebird with luxury features and sound deadening that added pounds compared to stripped Camaros, and the result was a car that felt heavier and slower despite similar power. The handling was competent but not exceptional. The Firebird's suspension was tuned more for comfort than the Camaro's performance-oriented setup. Body roll was more pronounced, and the overall feel was softer and less connected. The Trans Am package improved handling but wasn't available until very late in '69 production, leaving most Firebirds with suspension that prioritized ride quality over performance. The brakes were adequate, front discs and rear drums that were similar to Camaro, but felt less effective due to the Firebird's extra weight. The styling was controversial. The Firebird's more ornate front end with split grille and pronounced beak-divided opinions. Some found it distinctive and attractive. Others thought it looked busy and overwrought compared to the Camaro's cleaner lines. The interior was nicely appointed, but the dashboard layout was cluttered, and the materials quality was typical, GM, adequate but not impressive. The build quality was inconsistent. Some Firebirds were well assembled while others suffered from squeaks, rattles, and trim pieces that didn't fit properly. The Firebird's greatest problem was being compared directly to the Camaro. Shared platform meant similar capability, but the Camaro consistently felt lighter, more agile, and more focused. The Firebird tried to be a more refined, luxurious alternative, but ended up feeling heavier and less engaging. Quarter-mile times with the 400 engine were in the mid-14-second range, respectable but not impressive compared to properly equipped competitors. Today, 69 Firebirds are overshadowed by Trans Ams and Camaros, representing Pontiac's struggle to differentiate its F-body without making it objectively better. Number 4, 1968, Ford Mustang GT California Special. Ford's California Special was a regional variant created for the West Coast market, featuring unique styling touches that were supposed to make it distinctive and desirable. But the 1968 California Special was fundamentally a styling package with minimal performance substance, disappointing buyers who expected genuine GT capabilities. The base engine was Ford's 302 cubic inch small block, producing 230 horsepower, barely adequate for a car that wore GT badges and aggressive styling. Buyers could upgrade to the 390 cubic inch FE Big Block, or even the 428 Cobra jet. But most California Specials left showrooms with modest engines that couldn't support the performance image. The California Special's unique features were almost entirely cosmetic. Special side scoops, unique taillights, special striping, and distinctive trim. These visual elements created a car that looked different from standard Mustangs, but didn't perform any better. The handling was typical Mustang GT, competent for the era but not exceptional, with live rear axle and front suspension that created understeer and limited ultimate grip. The brakes were front discs and rear drums that were adequate but not impressive for aggressive driving. The interior was standard Mustang with some special badging but no functional improvements. The build quality was typical Ford, acceptable but not exceptional, with panel gaps and trim fitment that varied between examples. The California Special's fundamental problem was being a styling exercise rather than a genuine performance package. It looked special but didn't deliver proportional substance. The quarter-mile times with base engines were in the mid-16-second range. Disappointing for a car marketed as a performance special. Even with optional powerful engines, the California Special didn't offer advantages over standard Mustang GTs beyond appearance. The pricing wasn't competitive. The Special features added cost without adding performance, making buyers question the value. Today, California Specials are collectible primarily for their uniqueness and regional appeal rather than exceptional performance or capability. They represent what happens when marketing creates special editions that prioritize appearance over substance. Number 3, 1967, Chevrolet Camaro SS 350. Chevrolet's Camaro SS could be a legitimate muscle car with the right engine, but the base 350 cubic inch small block option created disappointing performance that contradicted the SS marketing. The 350 produced 295 horsepower, adequate for normal driving but insufficient for genuine muscle car performance. Chevrolet's decision to offer the SS package with small block engines diluted the badge's meaning. SS was supposed to signify super sport performance, but 350-equipped cars delivered barely adequate acceleration. Quarter-mile times in the high 15-second range were disappointing compared to big block Camaros or properly equipped competitors. The handling was decent, the Camaro's fundamental chassis was good, and even base suspension provided competent dynamics. But the 350 SS didn't include the heavy-duty components that big block cars received, leaving it with suspension and brakes sized for the lighter, less powerful engine. The brakes were drums all around on early examples, with front discs optional but not standard. The stopping power was marginal for spirited driving, and fade was an issue during repeated hard stops. The styling was clean Camaro, which looked good, but the SS package added only subtle visual cues, special wheels, badges, and stripes that hinted at performance without delivering proportional substance. The interior was typical GM, functional but plain, with materials that felt cheap and assembly quality that varied between examples. The build quality was inconsistent. Early Camaros suffered from numerous quality control problems, including panel gaps, electrical issues, and trim pieces that didn't fit properly. The 350 SS's greatest sin was badge engineering, using the SS nameplate on cars that didn't deliver SS performance. Created confusion and disappointed buyers who expected more. Today, small block SS Camaros are relatively unloved. Collectors want big block cars or rare options, leaving 350 examples as affordable alternatives that remind us not all SS badges guaranteed impressive performance. They represent Chevrolet's decision to prioritize sales volume over nameplate integrity, diluting a prestigious badge to move more units. Number 2, 1969, Plymouth Roadrunner Base. The Roadrunner concept was brilliant. Take a mid-size Plymouth, strip out luxury features, add a big block engine, price it aggressively, and create an affordable muscle car that appealed to younger buyers. But the 1969 Roadrunner with the base 383 cubic inch V8 betrayed that concept by offering inadequate performance in a package that still looked and was marketed as a muscle car. The 383 produced 330 horsepower, decent output but insufficient for a car weighing over 3,500 pounds. Plymouth's decision to offer this engine as the Roadrunner base power plant undermined the car's muscle car credentials. Quarter-mile times in the mid-15-second range were disappointing for a car wearing Roadrunner badges and graphics. The whole point of the Roadrunner was delivering big block performance at affordable prices, but the base engine delivered neither impressive performance nor significant cost savings. The handling was typical B-body Plymouth, adequate but not exceptional, with suspension tuned more for comfort than performance. The stripped interior that made sense with a 440 or Hemi just felt cheap with the base engine. Buyers got poverty spec trim without the performance to justify it. The bench seat, rubber floor mats, and basic dashboard were acceptable sacrifices when you were getting 440 cubic inches and genuine muscle car acceleration. With the 383, it just felt like a cheap car. The brakes were drums all around on base models, marginal even for the modest performance. The build quality was typical Mopar, acceptable but with issues that included electrical problems, trim pieces that didn't fit properly, and paint quality that varied. The styling was brilliant. The Roadrunner graphics, the cartoon character license, the beep beep horn, all created personality and appeal. But that personality demanded performance to back it up, and the base engine couldn't deliver. Today, base engine Roadrunners are relatively unloved. Collectors want 440 or Hemi cars, leaving 383 examples as reminders that even the best muscle car concepts could be undermined by cost-cutting and inappropriate engine choices. Number 1, 1969, Dodge Super B base. The worst muscle car of the 1960s was Dodge's Super B, with the base 383 cubic inch V8, a car that betrayed everything the Super B nameplate represented. Dodge created the Super B as a budget muscle car competitor to Plymouth's Roadrunner, stripping luxury features and adding a big block engine to create affordable performance. But offering the 383 as the base engine created a Super B that was super in name only. The 383 produced 330 horsepower, the same output as the base Roadrunner engine, and equally inadequate for genuine muscle car performance. The Super B weighed over 3,500 pounds, which meant the 383 struggled to deliver even adequate acceleration. Quarter-mile times in the mid-15-second range were embarrassing for a car marketed as a performance machine. The whole concept of the Super B was wrong with this engine. The stripped interior, the deletion of comfort features, the bold graphics and aggressive styling, all promised performance the base engine couldn't deliver. Buyers who purchased base Super Bs got the worst of both worlds. A cheap interior with inadequate performance, a car that looked fast but disappointed every time they pushed the throttle. The handling was typical Coronet, adequate suspension that prioritized ride comfort over handling precision, with body roll and understeer that made aggressive cornering unpleasant. The brakes were four-wheel drums that were barely adequate even for the modest performance. And fade was an issue during any spirited driving. The interior was stripped to reduce costs. Bench seat, rubber floor mats, minimal sound deadening, basic dashboard. These sacrifices made sense in a 446-pack Super B, where you were trading comfort for performance. In a 383 car, you just had a cheap interior with nothing to show for it. The build quality was typical late 60s Mopar, acceptable but not impressive, with examples suffering from electrical gremlins, squeaks and rattles, and trim pieces that didn't fit properly. The styling was bold and aggressive. The bumblebee stripes, the aggressive hood, the Super B graphics all created visual impact. But that styling created expectations the base engine couldn't meet, making the disconnect between appearance and performance even more disappointing. Today, base engine Super Bs are virtually worthless. Collectors avoid them, enthusiasts mock them, and survivors are reminded that badge engineering and cost-cutting can destroy even the best muscle car concepts. The 383 Super B represents everything wrong with the muscle car era's final years. Manufacturers desperate to maintain sales volumes, diluting proud nameplates with inadequate engines, creating cars that looked the part but couldn't deliver the performance that muscle car badges demanded. These machines weren't just disappointing, they were betrayals of everything muscle cars were supposed to represent. Power, performance, excitement, capability. These cars promised all of it through their styling, their badges, their marketing, but they delivered economy car performance in muscle car bodies, creating disconnect between expectation and reality that left buyers frustrated and disillusioned. From base engines that shouldn't have been offered in performance cars to confused positioning that satisfied nobody to execution problems that undermined sound concepts. These cars represented Detroit at its worst, when sales targets and cost pressures destroyed the integrity of performance nameplates. Which of these disappointments do you think betrayed buyers most? Which failure stings worse decades later? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you appreciate honest looks at automotive history, including the failures alongside the legends, hit subscribe for more stories that tell the complete truth about America's muscle car era.